Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Accursed. The Prendergast family of outcasts, well, they claim no single point of origin. Where other outcasts remember a fall, a war, a door slammed shut in their metaphysical faces, the Prendergasts remember being needed. They weren't exiled in a flash of fire or thunder. They were relieved of duty. They were quietly dismissed. They were replaced or told that their services were basically no longer needed. Now, according to family law, the Prendergasts once stood outside, or that should be in outsides, attendants in radiant, merciless courts that modern scholars would recognise as, well, you might call them Fey adjacent. They weren't nobles. They weren't the sovereigns. They were facilitators. Huntsmen. They were heralds. Keepers of thresholds, advisors who spoke only when spoken to. Though they existed in outsides, they were inside. They were essential. They were necessary. They were a part of the machine that keeps outsides running. They were trusted with secrets very few had the good fortune, or I suppose depending on the secret, bad luck to hear. Why they were cast out remains the family's central mystery. Obviously, there are many theories behind this. Some Prendergasts believe that they failed a test of loyalty, choosing compassion for perhaps humanity when they should have been cold and callous like their masters. Maybe they were disobedient at some point. Others whisper that they succeeded too well, that the Fae realized that their servants ultimately understood the machinery of power better than the rulers themselves. A few claim there was no reason at all. The Fae just grew bored. And as eldritch, alien creatures are oft to do, a flick of a wrist, or the twitch of an eyebrow, or just waking up on the wrong side of bed resulted in this entire family earning its damnation. And once they fell into humanity. Now, Prendergasts learned quickly, and they still do to this day, that humans respond well to service, that trust can be purchased not only with money, but with competence, with discretion, with sacrifice of time, of energy, of your skills. The role fits them like an old uniform pulled from storage. Over generations, if such a word can be applied to outcasts, the family refined its craft, becoming the unseen infrastructure of mortal power. This goes back centuries. You will often find Prendergasts in the courts of the mighty. Believe me, you will. Any outcast scholar, speak with the Nephilim, speak with the Shimmerai. If you ask them who was pulling the strings in Henry VIII's court, was it Cardinal Wolsey in the early years? Was it Thomas Cromwell in that central period? Or perhaps was there a Prendergast there actually manipulating things behind the scene to ensure, or to at least try to ensure, that Henry never produced a male heir? Well, maybe the Prendergast was found out just before Jane Seymour produced Edward VI, but we don't know. The Nephilim and Shimmerai are fairly certain. The Prendergasts, not just in the Tudor courts, but all around the world, have often applied pressure, mystical and otherwise. Like all outcast families, the Prendergasts are cursed with the desire to blend in, to pass, to become human. Yet beneath the curse lies a deeper hunger: return. The Prendergasts believe that knowledge is the toll required to re-enter the outside. Knowledge of the Fae, of contracts older than law, of rituals that blur servant and master, watcher and watched. Humanity, with the accursed, its sorcerers, its hungry, primal, and dead, is a living archive of stolen, fragmented truths, and the best way to access those truths is through intimacy. Prenderghasts, they're not dead. They don't haunt. They attach themselves to others. Now, whether that attachment is parasitic and they are slowly sapping that knowledge out of their victims, like some ascetic, or whether it is in fact that their being there is as much a compliment to that mortal's life as it is a terrible toll, really depends on the Prendergast and the way they conduct themselves. But all butlers should follow a code of discretion, of loyalty, of trust. It should take quite a lot for a Prendergast to betray the person they choose as their master. And keep that in mind. Prendergasts act every part like Jeeves, like Alfred. This even ties into some of their most popular nicknames. They're named after the famous butlers the media has presented to us. But they choose their masters, not the other way round. The masters may think it happened that way, but no. The Prendergasts calculate. They know whose lives they want to ingratiate themselves into. And they enter these lives through employment oaths, carefully negotiated contracts, and once bound, they observe everything. Vulnerabilities, secrets, moments of despair, and moments of triumph, of course. They watch their employers sleep, not out of malice, well, sometimes out of malice, but mostly out of necessity. Vulnerability is where truths surface, what they would give to be able to access the dreams of the sleeper. Intimacy is power, and power is currency. Wages alone are never enough. A Prendergast wants stories, they want names, they want whispered rumours of fairy roads and broken courts. They will serve faithfully and sometimes obsessively to earn these things. And sometimes, disastrously, they forget why they began. A Prendergast can be in service to a family for so long that they just cannot remember why they started. Is this part of their damnation, or is it just a symptom of being away from their home and wearing a mask for far too long that they forget themselves and their motives? The Prendergasts call themselves a family, though blood has very little to do with it. Membership is recognised through shared custom, mutual obligation, and almost religious reverence for contract law. From birth, or manifestation, Prendergasts are trained in etiquette, negotiation, conflict de-escalation, and the careful use of magic in service to others. They're not a union, though they function like one when pressed. Nor are they a guild, though their reputation alone opens doors. To employ a Prendergast is to signal prestige, discretion, access to something other. Internally, they maintain whisper networks. They constantly update each other. There's a transactional blacklist of exploitative employers, dangerous accursed, entities who misunderstand the difference between service and ownership. They have many backup protocols. If a Prendergast can't exit a contract through pre-negotiated loopholes, others will intervene on their behalf, legally, socially, supernaturally, and violently at times. And there is a collegial formality, I will say, between Prendergasts. They address one another as Mr., Ms., Mrs., often by surname. True names, which they acknowledge the existence of, are avoided. The family knows they matter, but not how, and no one wants to be the one who finds out the hard way. They're comfortable with long periods of isolation, but discoveries, especially those related to the Fae, can summon the family together in hours, regardless of distance or danger. This is where you see Prendergast on the move. It's sometimes referred to as a stampede by other outcasts, because you don't want to get in a Prendergast's way when it's time for a family meeting. They will access all manner of liminalities and outsides to reach their companions on the other side of the world, if needs be. Now, to the outside world, Prendergasts are, as I say, known by these softer names: Alfreds, Jeeves, Bates, Butler, Assistant, Fixer. The archetype disarms suspicion. After all, what threat does a loyal servant pose? And that is their greatest strength, and a quiet form of horror. They will be right there, and above all suspicion, when something goes wrong. The Prendergast is the member of the staff who you trust. After all, they know everything about you. They would never betray you. And the Prendergasts, they understand this. They understand hierarchy intimately. They know when to kneel, what to advise, and when to hold the knife behind the back. Ideally, they imagine themselves in huntsmen in the service to a terrible king or queen. They are necessary, they're respected. They're feared, yes, they are feared as well. In practice, though, as mentioned earlier, they are inside, just as they were when they dwelled in the outside. Just because they were outsiders does not mean they were not inside on the winning team, and so that is where they try to place themselves now. It's how they earn their power. Sometimes, undoubtedly, a Prendergast becomes too attached, love might eclipse curiosity, loyalty becomes genuine, and these individuals are quietly watched by the rest of the family. They're not punished, they are protected, from themselves as much as from others. A servant who forgets that they are an outcast may never find it again. The first contract a Prendergast signed, the original agreement between the family and the Fae, written in a language no one can read these days, is still an extant document. I say document, it's actually carved in stone, but that's probably why it survived as long as it has. When the family initially left the outside, and obviously the younger Prendergasts don't know all of the reasons behind this, they brought this tablet with the inscription of their oaths, of their contract with them. There is no artifact held in greater reverence to the Prendergast, but rumour is that in very recent years it vanished. Eyes immediately swooped over to the Shimmerai, known for breaking in and stealing tablets, antiques, trophies, heirlooms, and so on, and others are now suspicious of the Napoleons, who have likewise started growing their empire of relics. The Prendergasts don't know where it's gone. They know the importance of the role of history and indeed the power of contract, and they are deeply anxious and angry over what could occur should that tablet get into the wrong hands. Hell, it probably already is. Has it been taken back to an outside? Does another family have it? Maybe it was just mislaid. Maybe the butler forgot. Some believe that perfect service rendered without resentment or self-interest can open a door back to the outside. This is the most recurring Prendergast myth, that if they just serve, if they just continue fulfilling their duty without complaint, the Fae will ask them back. Now, this is a recurring myth, but it's one that the Prendergasts have a love-hate affair with. They appreciate having the aspiration. It's something they tell each other all the time. Maybe at some point the outside will just open up to us again. But the younger Prendergasts detest this idea. They detest the idea that they must subject themselves entirely to all manner of people without ever bettering themselves or gaining anything for themselves, just to serve another legion of inhuman masters. There are hints that the Prendergasts are not merely seeking the Fae, but they are being studied by them. Everything that the elder Prendergasts collect from their mortal charges and the accursed families that they serve, because they do sometimes serve other accursed, is fed back to the Fae. That they weren't dismissed at all. They are, in fact, sleeper agents or just willing agents within other accursed societies. And this has resulted in the Prendergasts of late being held at an arm's length. Not always fairly, because even if this is occurring, it certainly isn't happening with every single Prendergast there is. Prejudice is growing against the butlers, and, well, probably only a handful of them have actually done what they are accused of. A few elders of the family suggest that the family's true names were stripped from them during their exile, scattered among humanity. Recovering this power might restore what was lost, or it might destroy what remains. You see, some Prenderghasts are very proud of their new status, of their trusted status among humanity. They don't care all that much that other accursed look at them and think, what are these people trying to gain? What are these outcasts actually trying to achieve? So, again, it will be interesting to know what becomes of the Prenderghasts if they find traces of their past and can verify them. In the end, the Prenderghasts aren't villains, but they aren't as trustworthy as they would want you to think. They're the perfect servants. They're trained to support, trained to enable, and they do make themselves indispensable. They will stand by your side at your darkest hour, and they are calm, they will be capable, and they will always anticipate what you need. And all the while, they will listen. And they will learn. They will wait for the moment when service becomes leverage, leverage becomes knowledge, and knowledge becomes the key to a door that has been closed for too long. What will happen when the Prenderghasts open it?